All right. Hello, what's up? It's Whiskey Wednesday. Or as someone commented to me earlier, I might need to start thinking about having a Fiddler Friday for Luthier as well. But it is Wednesday night. I'm Dave. Hello, everybody out there in both Facebook and YouTube land. Really excited about tonight. We've got a couple different things going on. We've got some updates that I'm going to scroll through kind of quickly. And then we're going to get to the main event. We've got two special guests, Kevin Ngo from up in Canada, that's helping us out with the theme, the thematic integration of Luthier. So we're excited to hear from him about that. And then Cody Reimer, rules editor for both Distilled and for Luthier, are going to be joining us. That's going to be in just a little bit, so be sure to stick around and let's get to it. Now, a couple things as a reminder, I always like to post this up. If you are listening in on Facebook right now, especially if you are on the Luthier Facebook group and you're tuning in, be sure to click this link or go to StreamYard.com/Facebook. All you're doing is essentially telling Facebook, yeah, it's okay to let StreamYard get my name, because otherwise when you post something on here, I'm actually not going to be able to know it's you. It's just going to say like anonymous user or something, Facebook user. So if you want me to be able to know you are listening and you are chiming in, please go ahead and do that. Now, please do post something in the comments. As always, the first thing I like to start off with is what you drinking. Tonight, I'm actually having a Bladnock, and this is actually courtesy of a couple favorite people of mine. Let's see if you can see that. Bladnock, there you go. Bladnock Samsara. This is a Lowland single malt, so over in Scotland. Lowlands are actually pretty rare because there's not a lot of malt whiskeys that happen in the Lowlands. The Lowlands essentially are kind of right down along the borders and kind of in the southern part of Scotland as you get towards England. But this is from Liz and Tim, really good friends of mine, big distilled fans, big distilled helpers, play testers, also Luthier play testers. Slán Java to Tim and Liz out there. Thank you for that fun little thing. They gave it to me at the UK Games Expo because they knew I couldn't carry much back. And that was really nice of them. So again, the Bladnock, check that out if you are into a nice, sweet kind of vanilla notes whiskey. So again, Slanja. Oh, hey, TK, good evening. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. Thanks, TK. Thanks for chiming in. So TK's here, Edward Taylor King. Really part of a really phenomenal group, the Kins and Key Games. They're coming out with Galactic Cruise on Kickstarter next year. I think it's early next year, TK. So thanks for chiming in and watching along. The other thing I wanted to show you is I'm going to be using a special coaster tonight. These coasters were crafted by my daughter in a craft shop at our family summer camp. They're little log pieces. Oh, look at that. Best dad ever. Little log pieces that can be used as coasters. I kind of feel like this should be a Kickstarter extra stretch goal next time, like handmade by my daughter. Live, laugh, love board games. And again, best dad ever. So thanks to my daughter, Eleanor, for those. She is awesome. Both Eleanor and Bennett are always making me awesome gifts, oftentimes whiskey themed or board game themed. I don't know if that's a good thing or not for me as a parent, but that's what it is. Drinking some pure aqua purified water all the way from Essen, Germany, transported via Aldi. Nice. Getting in the Essen mindset, TK. I like that. All right. So let's go ahead. I'm going to turn that off. Please be sure to put any questions you might have. Looks like I'm kind of out of focus. Wonder if I have to get in. Any questions for me in the comments? And I'm going to dive right in. So I got a couple different things. First, I wanted to talk about Gen Con. So Gen Con came and happened. And it was a wild, crazy ride. Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to begin. I thought it would be just fun to show you a couple pictures of Gen Con and my experience there, because it was pretty phenomenal. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to see if I can get this. There we go. Let me turn off this. Essentially, when you begin at Gen Con as an exhibitor, the first thing you look at is that you realize you need to get your product from point A to point B, from there to Gen Con. I luckily am storing and working with QML, Quartermaster Logistics, down in Florida, and they had a caravan that could bring our pallets up. So I had 4 pallets there, just over 400 games, about 450 games-ish, plus a bunch of extras as well. I just wanted to give you all a sneak peek of what that looks like when you arrive. Oh, hey, Chris, thanks for chiming in. Joined a couple of ounces of Jack Daniel's cinnamon. Nice. So thanks for chiming in, Slán Java, to both of you. If you're drinking something tonight, please post it in the chat. so we can all hear what you're enjoying as well. So there you see kind of the booth, Paverson Games booth in the background there, and the 4 pallets. I thought it'd be just fun to go through a couple pictures from the con itself. Also, some of the games I played. So I got to play Underwater Cities for the first time, or no, second time. Second time. That was a lot of fun. I also got to go to a pretty cool cigar and cocktail bar called Nikki Blaine's. I haven't had a cigar inside in maybe hardly ever, so that was kind of fun. Like that really killer giant ashtray as well. So that was a lot of fun checking that out. So here's our booth. This is essentially how we worked it. We had a 10 by 20, which meant that we had 10 feet by 20 feet of space. We were very lucky. We had a fellowship through Gen Con in Entrepreneurs Alley or Avenue to be able to have double the space, which worked out amazingly. As you can see, we used every inch of it. There's only some of the people that helped out at our booth. It was a phenomenal experience. We had 10 people overall helping at the booth at any given time. It was that crew. So it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plus me. So again, really, really great time. You can see in the front, we had a little Luthier preview. On the other side, we had something with Distilled, kind of a store in the front, and then 2 tables for games. So there's a picture of me in the booth looking out over the crowd. You can see, again, big crowd. And this was Thursday. So this was just the Thursday crowd right away at the beginning. Just overwhelmed with the number of people. You can see on my face, too. It's the same thing. Played some more games, beer and bread, and a blank space. I don't know. Drank some beer. So I just wanted to show you that, too. St. Charles Brewery, really cool in an old church. So this is essentially what we did. This was the final day. So this is our biggest, I think, our biggest stock Saturday. We sold out every day. We put out about this much every day. And within 2 hours, we sold out. So it was just absolutely crazy. Just we'd have to get there really early, bag things up, get things ready. And a line would be around the block. It was insane. Thankfully, Quartermaster Logistics had bags for us as well. So we could put those in bags for people who were getting bundles. Here's a shot of Blake. So Blake was our spirits consultant, a thematic consultant for Distilled. And he also goes by Dr. Inkwell. He's out in California, and he came out just for Gen Con. He ran a bunch of games of Distilled and signed a bunch of autographs because he's got his own card in the African Middle East expansion as well. So that was a lot of fun to run First Taste. That's a group going through First Taste behind the scenes. We were also super lucky and thankful and so excited to receive one of the Best of Gen Con awards from Gaming Trend. They give these out, a number of them. They kind of walk around the floor and give those out. So we were very lucky about this. This was for Luthier specifically. Essentially, get excited about that coming to Kickstarter. So that was really cool as well. I thought I'd show you this. I sat in line for over 2 hours on the loadout on the back end. So it's really interesting as an exhibitor. It's not just like you waltz in and everything's done for you. You're working basically a day ahead and a day at the end to prepare and set up. So these are all people also waiting to be let go to be able to line up and get unloaded, or in this case, loaded up. I was right next to the Dice Tower van this whole time. I should have turned over and taken a shot of that too. Played some Grand Austria Hotel, another favorite of mine as well. So that was a lot of fun. One of my favorite designers, Simone Luciani. Here, I just wanted to call out this group. This is one of the playtest groups I play with and try and meet up as much as I can regularly. So just shout out to all those cool cats. They're an amazing group of folks. All game designers, all bringing their own games to the table. Some of them have published games, Kickstarter games. So again, they're all amazing people. It was really fun. We had a little meetup at our booth there. And they took a shot of this, so I just wanted to show you. So again, and you can see Galen on the right side there. We're like, oh, what's going on? But Stella's there, so that would be often what would happen is they weren't the content creators weren't as interested in Distilled because that's been out for a couple months. That's what people were buying. But the content creators wanted to hear about Luthier, so I would give them kind of a quick pitch and talk to them about the game, talk to them about the process and what's coming next. Hey, Rolling Solo, thanks for chiming in too. Thanks for the compliments. So thanks to that awesome compliment. So here, speaking of content creators, one of my favorites. If you are a solo gamer, be sure to follow Rolling Solo. They do amazing videos great walkthroughs as well online. So be sure to go on YouTube and look for them. Thanks a lot for that nice compliment. So here's Stella learning a little bit about it. I sent Distilled to her last time, along with Thinker Themer, because they're both down in Australia. So it's a great way to send it to one, and then they send it on to the other one. All right, let me see here. I think that might be it for that. So that's it for those. Now, it was amazing. We sold out every day. We sold out of the whole con as well. I thought I had more pictures. Let's see here. If it didn't work out, let's see. Oh, yeah, this is what I wanted to show you too. Who knows why this didn't work out. This is all I had left at the end of the con. Everything else sold. So a bunch of basically coasters and shot glasses, which I don't blame people. Like, people aren't as interested in those anyway. So that was really neat. And then I'm able to store actually my entire booth in underneath my stairs. So there's a little sneak peek at how I do things. This is probably the last time I'm going to be able to do this. From now on, I probably will have to get some sort of storage unit, but that was I thought that would be a fun shot to show. That's everything, no joke. Everything that was in that booth, besides the games, are stored under their tables, banners, giant banners, all that stuff, tablecloths. Special thanks to all the helpers that helped out as well with that. Okay, so now what I wanted to talk about too was, as I mentioned, actually, I think I've got that shot too. Yeah. We had Luthier there as like a preview. So we were doing a sneak peek of Luthier. We were not playing the game. We were giving people like a 10-minute run through. Kevin, a designer from Chicago, came up and helped me with that. He really was working pretty much full-time at that, and I was too. And so this is kind of the setup we had. So I wanted to take a minute to show you a couple of these things close up. I haven't shared this online at all yet, so this is a first sneak peek for all those out there. So would love to hear what you think. Maybe feel free to put some post some comments out there. I'm going to show you two things. Neither of these are finished, but it'll give you an idea of kind of what we're working on. The first one is the player board. So this is, as a reminder, Vincent Dutrait is going to be the artist, or is the artist for the game. This is an in progress. Obviously, as you can see, maybe I can at least, some of the icons are still placeholder icons, but the overall kind of layout is essentially what it's going to be. That pink line you see around it, that kind of around the outside of it, that's the die cut. So that's the die line. That's where the factory would punch it out. So this player board, first of all, at least for the deluxe version for sure, is going to be dual layered. Secondly, it's going to have kind of a unique shape. It's going to have a bow to it. It's essentially supposed to try and represent kind of a workbench for a luthier. We see kind of in the middle, we're storing some of our different resources. The wax seals are locations where we would place workers to do certain actions to be able to rough things out. And that kind of gilded oval frame on the left is where we're going to be placing our luthier families. Much like in Distilled, where you have distiller identities, you'll start the game with a couple of those and you'll choose one and you'd place it there. And since it's dual layered, you'll be able to kind of punch that into that, place that into the actual board. So I won't go into great detail about everything else. That'll come down the road, but gives you a sneak peek into it. Again, I want to emphasize the fact that really, it's really important to note that this is all still prototype. Pretty much every single icon is placeholder. A lot of these are the ones that Richard and I have been using for months in play testing. Thanks a lot, Rockford. So Board Games Bourbon, Rockford Flaherty, thanks for posting, giving those compliments. So yeah, we're really excited. We're really excited about how this is coming together. Each player's color will be that wax seal. So this one's red. Let's just say it's a red player. Others would be different colors as well. Those subtle hints that you might have seen in Distilled, we're trying to bring across again in Luthier. The other thing I'm excited to show you, and again, totally rough here, is the main board. So this is a very rough concept of the main board. The main board will be in the center of the table and will be pretty big. Again, I want to emphasize rough. This is sketched by Guillaume Tavernier, who is our other artist. He is going to be we've commissioned him just to do this board because this is his specialty, is doing kind of orthographic views, architectural renderings, oftentimes for RPGs, but for this, in this case, obviously for a board game. Really excited about that. What you can see here is we're going to have a main orchestra kind of centrally in the middle of the board. We're going to have some areas for markets as well as around on the top. But then essentially it's broken up into these wings. Think of this as a giant opera house or a concert hall. Perhaps there's a salon on the top left for patrons where you're trying to gather patrons, or on the top right, a guild to pick up new plans for instruments. down below an instrument shop for repairs, or perhaps rehearsal rooms to be able to prepare for performances. You can see those kind of red or salmon colored seals, those circles. Those are the 5 different locations you can place your worker on as well. So I wanted to give you a sneak peek of this. We had this, as I showed earlier, up on the on the kind of a placard at Gen Con to give people a sneak peek as well. So I thought it would be fun to show all of you exclusive first look beyond Gen Con to be able to see what we're working on. This has already evolved a little bit since I had this printed this and maybe put this together myself before Gen Con. So it'll evolve. There's already some changes, but you get the picture. Heavy theme. We are trying to get for this idea of you got your player board, but then you're going to go to this place to be able to do these actions that's going to be in the center of the board. We really want to grab table presence as much as we can for that. So thank you. Thanks, TK, for that great compliment. Yeah, we're really excited about this as well. So that's Kickstarter, or that's Luthier. The other thing I did want to point out too, let's see if I could pull this up, is Luthier's actually on Kickstarter already. We actually already have the preview page up. All that means it's a placeholder, nothing else. But what that means is if you wanted to, I haven't actually told anyone this. At Gen Con, again, I said, yeah, it's up there if you want to go check, but I haven't actually started to try and advertise this at all. I just wanted to post it up there. We already got over 200 followers on that, so that's exciting. If you're watching this and you want to be notified, be sure to go to this. Just search Luthier, or I think it's just Paverson Games /Luthier. I obviously probably in the next couple months will do a little bit more about advertising for this. But again, for those tuning in and watching, I figured it'd be good for you to see Luthier is on Kickstarter now, so you can say notify me for those that like that. Also, in other news, again, just more just updates about the future. I did want to point out that we are going to be at PAX Unplugged this year. So Paverson Games will have a booth at PAX Unplugged. And that booth is going to be selling distilled if we have any left in stock. I don't have much left, but I hope I have a little bit to be able to bring up there. But more importantly, I'm saying it right now, we're going to have multiple, at least 1 and 2, if we can fit it, tables of Luthier going. So you'll be able to stop by, try a play, try a couple rounds, whatever it might be that you might be interested in. Get a little taste of that. So that will be at PAX Unplugged in early December. So if you are someone that's planning on PAX U, December 1st through 3rd, stop by the Paverson Games booth and be sure to say hi for sure. But then also maybe pick up some goodies if you don't have all the distilled stuff. And most importantly, check out Luthier. We'd love to hear what you think of that. For those tuning in that don't know much about Luthier, it is a little heavier than distilled, but still kind of sticking to that same theme, heavy integration of theme and mechanics. Okay, so speaking of that and thinking about the future, one more thing I wanted to point out, and I'm going to talk about this a lot more in detail later, is I'm happy to report that we are pretty much finished with all tweaks and changes to submit for a second printing of distilled. We will be doing that, submitting that in the next probably couple weeks, printing in the next couple of months probably. We're making a couple of tweaks and changes, really tiny stuff. I've been working with Cody. Maybe he'll talk a little bit about that. Who knows when he comes on. Just making a couple UX things. It's honestly, I think there was one, not even error, but one thing that we're changing as far as wording and everything. Everything else is more just like, it'd be nice to tweak this a little bit. So we're doing that to do the reprint, and Eric's been helping us out with that. But the other thing I'm really excited about is that we are also going to start the printing of Cask Strength. Cask Strength is going to be the first official non-Kickstarter expansion for Distilled. I'm announcing it. I've already announced it, but I'm kind of showing you the box here. It is a small batch game. It's going to be just a nice little 55 card tuck box game that you can infuse into Distilled to give it just a little bit more strategy, a little bit more weight. So here's the box design Eric's created. We are going to be printing this as well. I am not going to do a Kickstarter for this, although I think it's cool when people do that. I actually am just going to have this available on our website as well as at cons. The hope would be early next year, like Q1 maybe, we'll have this available on your website. I am actually going to try and maybe do a pre-order system as well on my site so that you can kind of get your finger on one before they all sell out. We're not going to print a massive amount of these, but thanks, Dave. Take my money. Yeah, but we are really excited about this. A couple quick little details here. First, Richard Woods is going to be the designer for this. So our developer, he's designing this. This is going to replace cards if you want in the game, adding some powers and effects to ingredients. So making it a little crunchier, distilled a little crunchier. It's also going to add a new dynamic market as well. So we're really excited about it. It's for those that want more distilled, want to kind of kick it up a notch as well. So really excited about that. Stay tuned for more info on my newsletters and future Whiskey Wednesdays. We'll show you some of the previews of what some of those cards look like too. All right. So that's that. Thanks again to everybody. And Chris asks, will you add cast strength to the Luthier campaign page? Yeah, for sure. So anyone that wants to think about that in the future, we will have those available too. That'll be down the road, right? So Luthier won't be launching on Kickstarter until the summer, and cast strength will be available before that, but you could definitely do that for sure. Okay, so really excited. Took a little bit longer there, but I really wanted to make sure people got all the news. We've been really busy over here with Favors and Games, but it's now time for the main event, and I want to figure out a way to wipe off my thing. I don't know why it seems like it's all. That's a little better. Maybe I just need to get up further. That's it. But I want to introduce two people to you today. I asked them if they would jump on the call with me. So that you all can ask some questions to them, but I've got some questions for them too. I thought it'd just be kind of interesting to hear all about this. So without further ado, I want to bring on both Cody and Kevin. Let's see if we can do this. Come on up, gentlemen. There we go. How you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having us.
Okay, good. Yeah, and I can hear you. I think everyone else can hear you too. So again, like I had mentioned earlier, we really love to inform the community about what we're up to. We love to involve the community as well, and that's no exception with all of you, because actually, both of you, I think, I connected with you through certain kind of random communities of certain ways. So I thought before we go into too much detail about each of you and what you're doing, could you each maybe take a little bit of time, just introduce yourself, tell us what your background is, tell us how you stumbled across me or Distilled or Luthier. Just give people a little bit of background at home watching, so they know who they're listening to and the bright minds that are joining me on this call today. Maybe Cody, you want to go first?
Sure. I am Cody Reimer. I am an associate professor of English at the University of Wisconsin Stout. I first met Dave when I was applying for the job of assistant professor at Stout, and he was gracious and kind enough to come out and join us for the kind of luncheon with a lot of the faculty members, and then later, also invited me to some kind of board gaming events, and we became friends. And when I found out he was working on Distilled, I was like, what do you got going on over there? And, eventually, weaseled my way in as a technical writer and game studies scholar to helping contribute to that. And I'm very proud of Distilled and the work that the team has done, and even more so to be invited back for Luthier. And
yeah, you must have done it okay, right?
I must have done all right. So that's that. Oh, and very importantly, I am drinking 4 Roses tonight for Whiskey Wednesday.
Oh, nice. Ooh, 4 Roses, good ones. Yeah. Small batch 4 Roses bourbon. That's good. Yep. Delicious. Awesome. Thanks, Cody. How about you, Kevin?
I kind of live in 2 worlds, which is exactly why I'm a part of this team. I have a PhD in musicology, and I teach piano and performing. I perform as a classical pianist too, so I have that as a background. Also love board games. I mean, I know everybody here in the chat as well, but loves board games. And I also work in the industry for another publisher primarily on logistics, with fulfillment and coordinating with manufacturers and freight and everything. So I do that. But I guess I think I started following Distilled. It must have been like I just stumbled upon the Facebook group that you, Dave, had started to kind of build your community months before the Distilled Kickstarter. And then I got the game and have kind of been following ever since. And then it really struck a chord with me, so to speak, that when Dave announced that he was developing and designing Luthier, because of course that's like my two worlds, which are very like separate. It brings them together in a way that I've never seen before. So I think I watched one of the first live streams and got really excited about it, because it's my type of game too, the kind of heavier Euro. I love those games. So I think I reached out and I think I just sent you an email, Dave, that like this is really exciting. And if memory serves, I think there was a couple, maybe even rhetorical questions that you had on the stream that I just answered, or that I gave some context on. And then Dave sent a reply and eventually invited me on to consult.
Awesome.
And I'm drinking some 1800 añejo tequila.
Ooh, nice. Represent south of the border. Love it.
I spent some time, or I did my master's at Texas Tech, where there's a strong Mexican community, and I developed a taste for some nice tequila when I was there. So
that's cool. Well, hey, sticking with you, Kevin, and real quick, everybody listening in, we got 17 people watching right now. So for any of you, if you have a question, please post it in the comments, and I can ask that of Cody or Kevin. So please do that. Feel free to chat something down. So real quick, Kevin, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. So you said you were watching the stream, you picked out a couple things. Are there maybe certain things you can talk about the process of what drew you in, what you're excited about? Are there certain challenges with Luthier and its thematic elements? Like, talk us through that process of how you're so far, what you've done.
I think the thing that really struck that I noticed, and it's been a while, and I've looked at so much of Luthier since then that I don't remember exactly what it was, but I could tell, or I knew that Distilled was like, that theme is really important to you, Dave. And so I don't know if I was looking for it, but I noticed it right away too, because some of the patrons maybe that you had on there were not kind of people that you would not necessarily like the all-stars, or not the people that you would think of first, but they're like that second or that third or that fourth layer that worked really well with the theme. But it showed me that there's already a significant level of research that you had put into making sure that this wasn't just a Euro that had like a really dry, that could be like a theme that was pasted over top of it, but that the game, the mechanics were developed from the theme first, perhaps. And that got me excited, because I think that's something, there's not many games out there with classical music as a theme. And I think some of the other ones out there are, or in general, like when you have music games, I don't know that theme is as strong of a driver as what I saw on that first stream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think it was funny because I do not have a background in music. I have a passion for history. I'm a professor, so that's part of it, I think, as well, liking to learn and research. But I put together this. I remember when I put together this original spreadsheet, and of course I'm linking to Wikipedia because that's just what I do. But I really tried to do my due diligence, and I remember you talking about like how some of them go into what you were talking about with the patrons. Some of them were kind of these out of the way ones, but it was also nice because I remember you giving me feedback in the last month or so saying, well, this one might be better than this one, based on the time period. So that was really great too. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that's so far, that's some of the stuff that I've spent some time on. is I think that might even be my highlight there with Frederick II.
Yep, it is. Yeah, that's why I had that up.
But I think we've substituted a couple lesser names for others that might be a little bit more suitable.
Mm-hmm.
So with Frederick II, he was an aristocrat, but he was also a musician, and played quite well. And there is an iconic painting that you find reproduced frequently that depicts him playing the flute. And I don't remember who we removed for him, but that's kind of some of the things. We've had some discussions about if we're gonna have what instruments, like limited in a sense mechanically, so that it's balanced. But if we are limited, if we have need to have 4 instruments or whatever, for this instrument family, like which are the 4 best to have? And I think the horn might have moved in and the trombone out.
Yeah, had to move
I think we had some discussions about the luthier families. I think we talked about Steinway. I'm not sure if Steinway is going to be, but Steinway was one that you had that hadn't been on your list originally.
And Cristofori replaced by Steinway. Yeah, exactly. And I wouldn't have done that before, but then you helped me realize, because I thought Steinway, it's American. I'm trying to stick to Europe, but you brought up, well, no, that's how it started in Europe.
Yeah,
right. So
and
is that great?
There's still like Steinway. There's probably 2 brands musically in terms of musical manufacturers that have have 2 of the strongest brands today. And Stradivarius is one, which you had, and Steinway pianos. There's a factory in New York, and there's still a factory in Hamburg that's producing that's producing Steinway instruments today, and they're a little bit different, but the Steinway lineage definitely goes back to Europe, so it ties in with theme, it ties in with the time. I think that's another thing that we've been wrestling with a little bit, is luthier happens over 200 years, give or take. So trying to figure out how to make that work.
Totally.
But it's been fun. I really enjoy it. It's exciting when I get an email, because there's
there's one last question there before you move on to Cody. Thanks, Rockford.
I think that is something that we might see is further repairs. We were talking about different kinds of maintenance, and absolutely for the keyboard instrument, the keyboard and percussion, we have timpani, we have the harpsichord, and the forte piano, and those would all need to be tuned, and you can't tune them in the way that a violinist will tune them like every single time they play. So
yeah, that's cool. Nice. All right, cool. So we'll come back to you in a second. I want to ask Cody, like, thinking about theme, thinking about integration, like you said, Kevin, coming across what I had done so far. Cody, that's kind of what you had to do with Distilled. You had to, like, whatever that looked like, you were brought in kind of halfway through versus Luthier more early on. So I'd love to hear a little bit about, from your standpoint, so not theme as much as rules, like what's that process been like, both for Distilled, but also maybe how it's evolved into Luthier.
Yeah, the process has been really different. With Distilled, when I came in, you asked me to take a look at the rules, because I remember I did an early play test after you got back from Scotland with it. And I said, this is fantastic. By the way, I teach technical writing. If you ever want help with rules, I would love to. I love board games. I love games. I'm a tech writer. Hit me up. And you said, I have somebody, but thanks.
Oh yeah.
And then
right.
At some point later, you're like, hey, would you mind taking a look at this? And I sent you back some notes, and you asked me to kind of come on board, but the notes were on like a Word document that I think either you or Richard had worked on. I don't remember if Richard was on board at that point or not. I think he was, because it was his document, because it was saved as a European language, British English.
Yeah,
British
flavor with a U.
And so, like, I inherited this Word document that was sort of kludged together and had all of these, British English spellings. And it was, I should have moved away from, Microsoft Word right away, but I sort of just hung in there and was like, well, this is what we're working with. it worked out okay. With Luthier, it's being brought on right away in the process has been really nice as far as being involved from early prototyping, thinking about the rules and language and theme and how all of that gets blended together. Because if we're using language to help reinforce theme, which helps reinforce design, but has to convey and communicate the mechanics, that all has to work at the same level. And so being brought on early in that regards is very helpful.
What would you say? I know that for me, that was an exciting moment, honestly, as an aside, when I realized, oh, I can get the band back together. Like, right. Like, and I can get them back together. Seth can do the scripting. Richard's going to be the wizard that he is in all things development and design. You can do the editing, but yeah, at that point I got excited because in the other cases, both with, and I think I'll probably have Seth on another time, with Seth too. Like, it was always like, okay, I'm inheriting this thing that Dave put together last time, and we're trying to continuously, Eric, even with art and design, same thing. So this second time around, I'd like to think that it's, I don't know about more smooth, but it's just, we know a little bit about what we're doing. We're more prepared. But what would be I guess my question is, what would be something that you consider is probably one of your more challenging elements that maybe wasn't in Distilled, or maybe it was, but is definitely in Luthier, that you've started on or you see down the road?
So that's a really good question. I think the most challenging part of Luthier so far is figuring out how to arrange the rule book. And so when I talk about arrangement, I'm talking about it in terms of composition. So writing studies, thinking about arrangement of like the order and sequencing and organization more colloquially. Because as it stands right now, the kind of core game mechanic, the core gameplay loop, doesn't get talked about in depth, in detail, until the very end of the rule book. And that's really challenging because you want to bring that to the foreground and say, just here's how to play as quickly as possible. But none of that makes any sense until you've done all of the scaffolding, the careful sort of contextual building and layering to make it make sense. And so there are things you can do early on, like give the round's overview and sort of tease it. But anything you do like that also helps delay how long it takes to get to that core gameplay loop. And so that's a real challenge to figure out how to arrange things so that people can get what they need as quickly as they can, because nobody wants to read the rules. Most people think of technical writing and rules as dry and stuffy and boring. They want to play the game, so to get it to be as accessible and user-friendly as possible while also doing its job in terms of arranging everything is really complex. And that's one of the reasons I was really happy with First Taste and am really excited about the rehearsal.
Talk about First Taste really quick, and then we're going to pop over to Kevin with a question.
Yeah, I don't remember if it was your idea or mine. If it was yours, I was thrilled about it. A colleague of mine wrote their PhD dissertation on hobbyist board game design, Tony Bushner, and they interviewed Cole Whirl and a bunch of fabulous designers, and they talked about this sort of trend that they're seeing as a technical writer and person who's got a PhD, a doctoral degree in rhetoric and composition, about this kind of split in rules books to better communicate to different audiences and for different purposes, and not try to pack everything into a single book. And so I was really excited by the idea of following in this, sort of footsteps of Wingspan and Root, and having a breakaway sort of step-by-step tutorial or guide, and to have the ability with Distilled to say, here's a really simple, hold your hand, walk you through it, sort of play-by-play. Because one of the things that I noticed in Distilled is throughout the setup, which, especially early on, it was a bit of a behemoth when we did a lot of the testing just on TTS and we didn't get a sense of the table space. And, all of the mechanics, it felt way more intense and crunchier than it actually was once you started playing. If you just started playing, it was so easy. And so let's just get them started playing, and then they'll realize, oh, this is significantly easier than I thought it was. And so that was I think a really important move. And as you were talking about before in backstage, it also really helps teaching and demoing at cons, which is an added bonus I hadn't even thought about, but I love that. And so doing that again for a slightly crunchier game with Luthier, I think is going to be even more important.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. We're excited about that with what we are calling rehearsal.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So, and thanks. Yeah. Lucas, thanks for the great compliment. We will be at Essen. I'm not going to have a booth, but there's a very good chance, I'm working on it right now, that we will have games available, English copies. There'll probably be German copies available from our German friends, Happy Shops, our partners over there, and perhaps other languages too. So unfortunately, I can't make it to Essen this year. I had to choose PAX or Essen, and me going over to UK Games Expo was kind of my one big one this year, but hopefully in the future. Okay, so let's do a quick round robin of kind of favorites. Let's pop back. Let's see if I can control this back. Let's pop back first to Kevin. Maybe, and take your time explaining this a little bit. What are maybe a couple examples, 2 to 3 examples that you would give that might be some of your favorite, most kind of thematically integrated games out there, board games out there?
Recently, anyways, actually, no, it's right here. Hegemony.
Oh yeah.
If you've played
Can you pull it down? Can you pull it down?
I mean,
or you get it. I don't want you to strain your back.
I get crushed. There you go. This one it's a theme that you wouldn't really like expect to be fun, because you're controlling you're controlling a social class within like a nation state. So exciting, right? So like you can play as the working class, you can play as the capitalist class, you can play as the middle class, and then you can also play as the state. It's a game where it's a card-based game where if you're playing, like, you play every turn, you play a card, and you either like play the card to use like a basic action, if your hand isn't great, or you can play the card for the ability of the card, and when you're like, especially when you're using the cards, like you're like I'm doing this like small business business loan or something like that to start up a new business, or like there's this like workers action, or like demonstrating, and like when you're playing, you're moving cubes along, you're moving cubes around, like you're changing like the tax rate, or you're changing like the cost of healthcare. But when you're doing that, you're not thinking about the fact that you're moving a cube. You're saying like I'm raising taxes because, or whatever. Cool. So, and it's a game that like you can tell it's really, really thoroughly researched. Like there's a whole like research book that comes with it. I haven't read it.
I've heard that it's like a full extra book, right?
Yeah, there's the background behind it, and then when you sit down and play it works. It's fun. Like I wouldn't even be talking about it if it wasn't fun. Mm-hmm. And I think that says something, because we're not talking about like Vikings or something like that. We're talking about changing tax rates, or changing immigration policies. Like that those are not things that you would associate initially with something that is fun. But I really enjoy it.
Cool. That's good. That's good. Any others? Or would you say is that your one of the moment? If there's any others,
that's like recent. I really like Vital Lacerda's Kanban. Mm-hmm. Like that one. There's so much going on, but it just works because like mechanics are so. It just makes sense. Like if you're gonna like build a car, you need to have the parts first. If you're gonna upgrade something, you need to have the plan. Or I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's like there's a lot of that crunchy decision space. Mm-hmm. But learning the game and kind of getting into it is really like fast track, considering how complex or how intricate the connections are, or at least the sequence. Like I think in Kanban, it's really about sequencing your actions, like where you need to go here first, so you can go there next, so you can go there. But it's way more streamlined or easy to do because it's all the theme.
That's cool. Yeah, that's on my top shelf of shame back there. Sadly, is that it right there? So Cody, we got to get together sometime and play this. Real quick, wanted to say thanks, Abe, for tuning in. Abe is the co-designer for Luthier. And so thanks, Abe, for tuning in. And yeah, thanks to both of you, of course, for bringing your amazing talents. So now let's go over to Cody. So not as much theme, Cody, but what about rules? Are there a couple games that you've seen that you kind of geek out on the rules, or you can tell like, oh, they actually hired someone that knows what they're doing, as opposed to, honestly, some of the rule sets out there I've seen. Sadly, I'll just drop it and go to a video right away because it doesn't make heads or tails. Thoughts on that? Any ones that stick out for you?
Yeah, I mentioned Wingspan and Root were great. Oath and Fort are two excellent examples as well. I really liked Everdell. I think the rule book for that was elegant and beautiful. It's not really a board game, but it's board game adjacent. The tabletop role playing game Blades in the Dark by John Harper has some of the best rules. The rule book for it. With TTRPGs, the rule book is the game, right? Like there's no board, there's no other components. Yeah. So that is the game. The rules are the game, so for me, that's exactly, what I'm focused in on. And that rule book is spectacular. It has everything that I could want. So, one of the things that is unfortunate but understandable with the sort of explosion of hobbyist board gaming is that because of crowdfunding, there's just a lot more board games available and a lot more indie folks working on them, and they don't always have somebody who's a trained technical writer who's got a PhD who teaches technical writing to say, hey, you want to work on this, and so, but by the same token, as I said before, people aren't usually excited for the rules. They usually get relegated to the one person who's sort of teaching everybody at their table how to play, and then it gets used only as a reference. And so my goal is to make it as fun to read as possible, as easy to learn as possible, and as quick to reference as possible. And if I can hit those benchmarks, then that's wonderful. And so that's also sort of what I look for in other rule books.
That's interesting. I like that kind of trifecta that you lay out, because so often I think people are focused on one, maybe two of those, but definitely one of, we just need to be thorough. It'll be fine because they'll find it eventually. Well, yeah, we're used to just searching something, right? So having that quick reference. And I have heard a lot of people actually compliment, actually I have it up. Let me just pull it up real quick. Compliment on the back page of the distilled rule book being really handy, not just the index so I can quickly find something, but also it's got kind of the same things that we have on a card, just repeated here so that there could be one out on the table. So that kind of gets to what you're saying, I think, with that, being able to quickly find something as well.
Yeah, the index and the kind of all of the back page contents came about as I was thinking about the rule book and how it would be used. And so a big part of teaching technical writing and doing technical writing is thinking about usability and user experience. And so thinking about what's the user experience of a rule book, well, it just gets laid on the table, often like cover down, and then snatched up and rifled through for a quick reference if they need to clarify rules or look up how a process or phase works. And so I thought, well, that's a whole bunch of real estate that could function sort of as an extra player guide, but even better. So if you look at it and glance at it, how about that? It just helps you use the rest of the book to find what you might need or to quickly at a glance answer questions. And so, I'm glad that you've heard compliments. I was pretty happy with that.
Cool. All right. Hey, Conesy's in tuning in. So Ben Cone, he's had a Wisco Dice, the podcast, has a question. So yeah, I got to see him at Gen Con. That was great. Luthier looks to be a neat combination of mechanisms. What mechanisms and games do you like the best? So how about that? Cody, what do you think? And then we'll go to Kevin. what are some of your favorite game mechanisms, would you say?
I actually, timely enough, really like worker placement games when it comes to board games and like, Euro style games. Worker placement is a lot of fun. I like seeing the wealth of options and getting to try to plan my moves and like, nest decision trees of like, but if they go there, that's where I want to go. So if they go there, then I need to go here. And so then like branching decision trees of that's the juice for me. So yeah, I like worker placement games.
Nice worker placement. What about you, Kevin?
I don't know if there's anything like I like a lot. Like worker placement has always been like a comfy home, I think, in a way. I also really like roll and writes. Just nice. Because like how it's a completely different type of game, but they're quick to get out, quick, like small footprint. So it can just make it a lot easier to play more often or more frequently, or even if you have less time. Rolling dice is always fun too. I played Scholars of the South Tigris, which is a Garfield game, and just the way that you're bag building with dice and combining, like you're combining. Actually, that one is really neat you're combining colors. So all the dice have colors, but you can change the colors and you can turn them into like secondary colors for different actions. That's a really really neat kind of combination of, or a way that like a fusion of mechanics, if you will. Those are some that I enjoy, but I don't know if there's much that I don't enjoy. I like a lot of everything, right? So
that's funny. Yeah, I'm with you. I more and more lately have been just enjoyed dice placement games or games that involve dice in interesting ways. It's neat because if you really think about it, depending on what those dice are doing, they're essentially creating six different, if it's a 6-sided die, 6 different options in one component, right? So it's a really neat way to be able to adjust on the fly and randomize, yet also create these kind of equally balanced decisions that people can make. I'm a big I love worker placement. I always have. I used to really like deck building, but I think action selection is another one I really enjoy, where it's kind of like worker placement in the sense where you have a number of different choices in front of you, and you can never choose, everything. And I think there's a little bit of that also in Luthier, I think, which is one reason why I really enjoy going back to it, even though it's a game I've play tested many times. It's a lot of fun to keep playing that. Okay, so we've got a few more minutes. If anyone has any other questions, please be sure to place them. Just type them down in the chat for Kevin or Cody or me. I got another question for each of you along in that same line. Kevin, we'll stick with you. Maybe going back to Luthier a little bit. And this is kind of a two-pronged question. Who are some of your favorite either composers or other elements that you find in Luthier right now? It might be a historical figure, it might be an instrument. So maybe talk a little bit about that. But then also, I'd love it if you would, and I'll try and kind of write it in the chat too, share with the whole audience out here, for people that are kind of noobs to classical music in general, what would be maybe a good starter composer or a movement or work that they should listen to?
Tough question, especially the second one, because if I have to come up with
you got to nail it down to one. Oh no.
But so one of the things that I thought was really neat is for the Luthier families. There's a couple that I'm trying to remember who we have actually in the game. Let's see here. But let me think. Do we have Playel as one of the families, or is that the one that we cut?
Can't remember if we have them or not. I'm pulling it up right now. Just a second.
I could pull it up on mine, but so one thing that's and I guess I'm approaching this because I really like, I'm a musicologist, but I'm I also live as a pianist. So the layers that we have with the forte piano makers, the thing that's different really about string instruments from compared to, I think, almost all the other instruments that are played right now, is that the golden age of string instrument making was like 250 years ago, and the instruments that we have today strive to reach that same standard. Like if we're talking about Stradivarius, or Guarneri, like if you have one of those instruments, like those instruments are the most valuable instruments out there. On the other hand, in terms of keyboard instruments, like the Broadwoods, and Erard. I think it was Erard that I was thinking of. Like those instruments have been surpassed like 150, if not 200 years ago, and they're kind of, in a sense, almost lost to history. They're very, very notable in their time, but to have that as a name that pops up, Cody, you're talking about Wingspan earlier, and I think one of the things that Wingspan does really, really well is that it gets people really interested in birds or birders, really interested in board games. And I think there's maybe a little bit of that with like the Erard family as an example. Like who is the Erard family? And to me, that's really interesting because it's something that you'd have to dig really, really deep to get to Samuel Erard otherwise. So I think that was something that I thought was neat. Is the lesser names that still really belong, or the unfamiliar names today that still are really relevant within like the Luthier time and place, is really neat to have that as part of the game, as people in the game, or as families in the game. As far as a piece of music, this is the impossible question. But I'm gonna throw one out. Brahms is in there, and in a way, like Brahms wrote just about everything. But one of my, I think maybe that's how I have to approach it. Is what's one of my favorite that I think other people might really appreciate as well. He wrote a piano trio, so it's a piece of chamber music for piano and violin and cello. It's in B major, and it's Opus 8, and I think that is just a really fantastic piece of music.
All right, I'm putting this in the comments. I think I've got it right, and tell me if I'm wrong, so people can jump to that as well. I think that's
I see it. Yeah,
again,
and there's
Wikipedia.
two versions of it.
Oh, is there?
And there's one that he wrote, like he originally wrote it early in his career, and he came back in later and he revised it, and the revised version is just like a chef's kiss. It's
nice.
Fantastic.
I'm gonna have to check that out after this. Perfect. Thanks, Kevin. Okay, so to Cody, and thanks, Chris. What a great compliment. Thank you. But yes, I agree. I'm a big proponent of surround yourself with people that are better at everything else than you are. So that's what I do. Like I look to the people that are experts, but also passionate. And so I'm I feel very lucky to have people like Kevin and Cody as part of the team. And of course, this is only just one sampling of the folks that are behind Luthier and Distilled. So, hey, Cody, what about you? Maybe more on the side of going back to rules. I'd love to hear, how do you absorb rules yourself? Are you someone that sits down and reads the rule book? Are you someone that does something else first? And if it is, like, if you watch videos, do you have any recommendations for people as far as best rule teachers, game teachers as well, maybe online, or ways to learn rules?
Yeah. I do a bit of both. I sometimes will read the PDF because I usually, in the board game groups I'm a part of, I'm not the owner of most of the board games. It's, me showing up at the other person's house, but I try to learn the game beforehand to kind of cut down on the time of the teach. So I'll look at, PDFs of rule books, but often I end up spending my like lunch break watching how to play it. And so there are, I think, I have two favorites. There's a lot of really good kind of YouTube how to play, watch it played kind of things, but there are two that come to mind. Rodney Smith from Watch It Played is, I think, the gold standard, just from the writing, the delivery, the production value, the examples given. It's concise, it's well rehearsed, it is superb, it's exceptional. But I also really like Ryan from Nights Around a Table, and not only because he did the sort of promo cut for Distilled and has done a Watch It Played for, or How to Play for Distilled, but I love his brand of humor, and to be able to balance that sort of levity with the concision of the teach, so that it's not just somebody riffing and cutting jokes for 30 minutes of my lunch. I really appreciate that. So those two are fantastic YouTube deliveries of the rules, but I try to do a bit of both.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah. Two of my go-to as well. And you mentioned playthroughs. So you're someone that also watches playthroughs. So that's something that I oftentimes won't do. I don't know why. Maybe I think it's like watching the movie before, who knows, like the spoilers, but that's interesting. So you kind of rely on playthroughs as well as part of your kind of rules absorption.
I do a bit, largely because that's sort of a cheeky way to gain some insight into user experience. And I think, user experience is hugely important in understanding how people play and experience the game. And it was something that I learned sort of, in the process of writing and working on Distilled, writing the rule book, or First Taste specifically, was how much strategy to include in the rules. Like, how much do I, how hard do you want me to hold your hand? Do you want me to just say, do this? Or do you want me to then say, like, and you're doing that because of this, which will later be important for this, but not this because of this? Like, that can get really long-winded, which is why I, wanted to be careful about how I tried to strike that balance. And so watching people's reactions as they play a game, and sort of talk through, their user experience. I do this, and that will let me do this, and speak aloud protocols, sort of, or think aloud protocols, is super valuable.
That's cool. Okay, so I have one more question for both of you, but first, Abe, co-designer for Luthier, has a great question for Kevin. So I'm going to put Kevin on the spot here. Abe asked Kevin, if you could go back to any time or place to witness a premiere performance of a composition, what would it be?
This is a great question. I love it.
Yeah.
And I have an automatic answer, which is probably why I like it too. I'd look to go not necessarily to a premiere performance, but like if I could go back to the late 1780s in Vienna and hear Mozart play. And the reason I wrote my dissertation on it, so like I'm really invested. But to hear him play, basically, the way we perform Mozart's music today, we, in general, like as a society, culturally, like our general performance practice today, is to play the notes that he wrote on the page, and only the notes that he played on the page. There's the influence of kind of the 19th and 20th century as a fear of wrong notes, or not wanting to play wrong notes. But the performance practice in Mozart's time was completely different, where you wouldn't notate something completely, and performers were also composers in a way that they aren't in classical music for the last 150 or almost 200 years too. So it would be the ability to kind of hear him. Like, I know what the notes are. If I know this, I know the music intimately. I know what is notated. But then to hear him play and how he improvised, or how he expanded on what that bass line was, that'd be a dream.
Yeah.
If time travel gets created in my lifetime, like I'm signing up for that.
Yeah, nice. Signing up for that trip. Nice. Oh, and that great answer. That's good. And I didn't know that about the notes. That's interesting. I want to hear more about that later. Chris says, as a bagpiper and budding accordionist, my instrument taste is not really in the luthier ballpark, but I like the history of the game. So it's funny, Chris, you say that because, and you'll see we don't have the bagpipe specifically called out as bagpipe, but we have the musette decor. Can you talk just briefly, Kevin, a couple sentences, what the musette decor is exactly?
Like within the context of the game or outside of that?
In general, what a musette decor is.
I think we can just think about it as like it's a I would say Baroque, which is like late 17, middle of the 18th century.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say middle of the 18th century, but a predecessor, like an early version. We call it as part of the bagpipe family,
mm-hmm.
just because sound production is similar with having like that bag of air.
Yeah, probably at that point, just like old bagpipes made out of probably like a sheep's bladder or some sort of bladder of an animal, I'm guessing. Yeah. So cool. And the accordion, yeah. I mean, one thing to note really quick, Chris, we call the game Luthier, but you're making instruments from across not just the what you'd find in an orchestra, but in certain cases not, like a hurdy-gurdy, for instance, which maybe is a little closer to an accordion if there is something close to that. So there's lots of other fun instruments we try to incorporate in that, that have historical significance, not always in an orchestra. So I'm excited for you to try it out too, Chris. Okay, so hey, last question I have for both of you. I almost want to like seal one of you off and see what you're going to say for each of you to say this. But as a closer, can each of you take turns, and maybe Cody, you want to start with this, how you foresee interacting with each other? This is the first time you've met, right? Like 10 minutes before this, we all introduced each other. You got to meet each other. I, of course, am interacting with each of you almost on a daily basis in chat and Discord and whatnot. But for you two, like, how do you foresee interacting with each other for Luthier? Cody, what about you?
That's a great question. So with Distilled, when I inherited, the project, it was already full of sort of flavorful thematic asides of like, here's how distilling works, and this is what the heads and the tails, the feints and the foreshots, and all of that was already sprinkled in, and that's not there yet in Luthier. So one of the first things that I am going to do is bend Kevin's ear and try to get some of that theme and if not flavor, what's the acoustics? I want the acoustics for the rule book, because that's fantastic. And I see that being really important to a game that marries the theme and the mechanics so well, but also really important to have his eyes on how I am characterizing the mechanics in language in the rules, and make sure that I'm not, messing up the theme in the actual kind of plain language rules. So both of those ways will be kind of how I look forward to working with Kevin. Also everything that he says too, I look forward.
Yeah, after this, I guess you're both part of the dev chat in our Discord, so you can connect there too. But one thing that came up recently, Kevin, I think it was you were referring to some, like you kept saying instruments is family. It's like, well, it's in this family, the strings family. And I think I confirmed with you. So is that what would be good? And that's generally what we call it. And so I think I made a comment in the rules to Cody, like, we might want to start thinking, but I think we just say instrument type. And, again, that's an example of like trying to connect theme, even just in little subtle ways, by how we're categorizing things too. So, Kevin, what about you?
I don't know if I have a whole lot to add, but I think Cody, you're probably I think you're probably right on the mark there in terms of having. I think that's basically how I think I would see my role in general, is that I might have the answers to a question that Cody you might have, or that Dave you might have, that I have it like instantly at my fingertips, and might save you like 3 or 4 hours of reading or something like that. And I think that's really where my expertise like will come in. But I think that would be it. I don't know if I have a whole lot to add to it. But like we met about an hour ago, and we haven't really interacted yet. So I like initially I wouldn't have necessarily expected that to change, or that to be any different. But one of the things that you said earlier, Cody, about trying to, in terms of how much thought you put into the language that you use in the rule book, about maybe 20 minutes ago at this point, like that was when I realized, oh, maybe I do have something to contribute to the rule book, or that there will be at some point down the road we'll be going back and forth with different kinds of things.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for you two. I didn't even think about that, but a great kind of kickoff to you two connecting and talking now, and sharing things back and forth. So that's exciting too. So, well, I want to thank both of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to chat with me, chat with all those out there. Thanks everyone for tuning in and asking questions too. That's always great to hear you being engaged and asking some of those cool questions too. So
great questions.
Yeah.
Very good questions
from everyone. Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
It's fun. Looking
Well,
forward
cool.
to it.
Thanks to both of you. And until next time, and everybody out there as well, until next time, Slan Java. And I'll hopefully be back in, mine's empty. I'm going to have to fill up again. Hopefully we'll be back in, what is this, August, maybe September, hoping to be able to talk a little bit more about the reprint, show you some new updates on luthier artwork and design, and maybe talk a little bit more about cast strength. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Have a good night, everybody. See ya.